Hello there everyone, my name is David Lutchford and today I'm going to be teaching you the 10th lesson in my Ancient Greek course, and today it's on the definite article and gender, number and case. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to translate some simple Ancient Greek sentences, which is great because thus far we've just covered the basics and verbs, but now we're going to meet the definite article and we're also going to meet some nouns. So let's get to it. In English, the definite article is the word the. The word article refers to a word preceding a noun, and a noun is a naming word, a word that names something like chair or dog, cat and so forth. And we know that the word the always comes before a noun. The chair, the dog, the cat. And the definite part refers to the fact that this article picks out a specific instance of that thing. Instead of saying a chair, we say the chair. We're picking out one particular instance of that thing. So in English, the definite article is the word the. And the ancient Greek definite article roughly corresponds to the English the. However, there are occasions when they use the definite article in places where we would not use the word the. And likewise, there are places where they leave out the definite article where we would say the. So it's not a perfect correlation. But for now, let's note that the definite article is the word the in English, and for now, when we translate the ancient Greek definite article, we will translate it using the word the. This is the definite article in ancient Greek. You might be asking, why are there so many forms of the word the? Don't panic, there's actually a good reason for this, and it's not as crazy as it may seem at first glance. The reason that there are so many forms of the definite article in ancient Greek is because it changes its form according to the gender, number and case of the noun that it applies to. Don't worry if you're unfamiliar with these terms, as I shall shortly explain what they mean. But right now, it will suffice to say that the reason the definite article has so many forms is because it changes its form according to gender, number and case. And to illustrate how these tables work, the columns are divided up into masculine, feminine and neuter, abbreviated MFN. These are the three ancient Greek noun genders. A noun in ancient Greek will be one of these three genders. So that's the gender part, but what about case? Well, the rows are divided up into the four main ancient Greek cases, which we shall shortly learn about. And finally, with regard to number, the reason that there are two tables rather than just one is because the first table is singular. That is to say, these forms of the definite article are used for singular nouns, when there's just one of something. So for example, the phrase the man in ancient Greek would use a singular form of the definite article, whereas if you wanted to say the men, then you would use a plural form of the definite article. So there are 24 forms of the definite article, but some of them are identical to each other, because of the fact that it changes its form according to gender, case, and number. So let's now find out more about each of these three qualities, gender, case, and number, one by one. Let's start with gender. There are three noun genders in ancient Greek: masculine, feminine, and neuter, abbreviated M, F, and N. Every noun in ancient Greek has a fixed gender. It will be one of these three genders. However, there are a couple that can be either masculine or feminine, depending on the context, but in an ancient Greek text, they will be one or the other. But most nouns have one definitive gender. An example of a masculine noun is the word doulos, which means slave. An example of a feminine noun is the word boer, which means shout. As a noun, that is, as in the sentence, I heard a shout. And an example of a neuter noun is ploion, which means ship. Whenever you learn the meaning of an ancient Greek noun, you should remember its gender as well. Later on, we'll discover that there are some patterns by which we can recognize the gender of a noun without making a conscious effort to remember it. But for now, do try and learn the gender of each noun. So doulos is masculine, boer is feminine, and ploion is neuter. Note that these terms do not have much to do with biological gender and masculinity and femininity. There is sometimes some overlap with biological gender, but for the most part, masculine, feminine and neuter nouns are distinct from our idea of biological gender. So, for example, there's no reason we would associate boer, a shout, with femininity in biological terms. There are some links though. So, for example, words associated with women, like the word woman and the word girl, are feminine. And likewise, words associated with men, such as man and young man, are masculine. But as the word boer illustrates, grammatical gender is quite distinct from biological gender for the most part. Finally, the term neuter is a Latin term that means neither. So it means neither masculine nor feminine. It's kind of the other category. And neuter nouns are often things or objects, but not always. And things might also be either masculine or feminine. So you can't assume that if the noun is a thing, then it's neuter. In general, just try and learn the gender of each noun that you meet. Now, the reason that the definite article also has forms for the three genders is because if it is applying to a noun of a particular gender, then it needs to match that noun in terms of its own gender. In technical terms, we would say that the definite article needs to agree with the noun that it applies to in terms of gender, and we shall see also case and number. So to illustrate, the word doulos, because it is masculine, would need a masculine form of the definite article before it. So we would say ho doulos, the slave. And because boer is a feminine noun, it needs a feminine form of the definite article before it. So we could say her boer, the shout. And finally, because ploion is neuter, we need a neuter form of the definite article before it. So we could say to ploion, meaning the ship. And note that the definite article comes before the noun that it applies to, as in English. And crucially, it needs to match the noun that it applies to in terms of its gender, and also its case and its number, as we're about to see. Let's move on to case. The vast majority of the nouns you meet in ancient Greek will be able to be in one of four main grammatical cases. And this concept of grammatical case is absolutely essential to ancient Greek. In short, the case that a noun appears in determines its function in the sentence. And you might wonder, well, how do I know which case a noun is in? Well, nouns change their endings according to their case. But the really lovely thing about the definite article is that it also changes its form according to the case that the noun that it applies to is in. So the definite article serves as kind of a key. If you know the definite article off by heart, then you will know which case the noun following it is in. So I said that the case that a noun is in determines its function in the sentence. Let's look at how this works in a bit more detail by looking at the four main cases in ancient Greek. These are the four main cases in ancient Greek. You've got the nominative case, the accusative case, the genitive case, and the dative case. The nominative case can be abbreviated NOM, the accusative case can be abbreviated ACC, genitive as GEN, and dative as DAT. So nearly every noun you will meet in ancient Greek can be in any one of these cases. And it appears in one of these cases according to its role or its function in that particular sentence. So for example, if a noun is in the nominative case, then it is the subject of the sentence. Subject is a grammatical term used to mean the person or thing who is doing the action of the verb. So for example, in the sentence, the girl walks, the girl is the subject because she's the one doing the walking. Likewise, in the sentence, the boy is carrying a chair, the boy is the subject because he is the one doing the carrying. And in both of those examples, the girl and the boy would appear in the nominative case in ancient Greek. The accusative case, on the other hand, is used to indicate the object of the sentence, technically the direct object. The grammatical object is the one that's on the receiving end of the action of the verb. they are having the action done to them. So for example, in the English sentence, the boy is carrying a chair, the chair is the object of the sentence because it is having the action of the verb done to it. It is being carried. And the boy is the subject. He's the one doing the carrying. Please note that these cases do have more uses than the ones I'm telling you here. However, I'm giving you these to give you an overview of each of the cases. These are the general and most important uses of each of the ancient Greek cases. Thirdly, we have the genitive case. Now, the genitive case should be translated using the English word of. This might be used to indicate possession, for example. So, for instance, you could say, the house of the man, and the man will be in the genitive case. In English, when it comes to people possessing things, we would use apostrophe s. We would say, the man's house, rather than the house of the man. But the house of the man illustrates the literal meaning of the genitive case, in one instance at least. Because it can also mean of in other senses, such as the crowd of citizens, meaning the crowd composed of citizens. And it can also mean of in the sense of some of the men. But the main way you should translate the genitive case is using of. An ancient Greek noun goes in the genitive case when an author wants to say of that noun. So, of the men, for example. The word men, and also the definite article, would be in the genitive case. And fourthly, if a noun is in the dative case, then we should generally translate it by saying to that noun or for that noun. So in the sentence, the man was speaking to the woman would go in the dative case. Likewise, if we said the slave was carrying the wine for his master, the noun master would go in the dative case. The technical term for the person to whom something is said or given, or for whom something is done, is the indirect object. Because technically the accusative is used to indicate the direct object, the one on the receiving end of the action of the verb, whereas the dative is generally used to indicate the indirect object, the person to whom something is being said or given, or for whom something is being done. To illustrate the difference between these, we could say, the boy gave a gift to the girl. In that sentence, the boy would be the subject. He would be in the nominative case. The gift would be the object. It would be in the accusative case because it is being given. Whereas the girl is the indirect object. The gift is being given to her. Like I said, the cases have more uses than this, but this is a very good overview. I should say that there is another case, but it's not that important for us right now, especially since the definite article only has forms for the four main cases. Let's now look at how you would write the slave in each of the cases. So in the nominative, the slave would be ho doulos. In the accusative, it would be ton doulon. In the genitive, it would be tu doulou. And in the dative, it would be toi douloi. And you can see that the word doulos changes its ending according to the case it's in. However, we are not going to learn about how nouns change their endings in this lesson, because my crucial point for you is that you can use the definite article as a kind of key. If you learn all of the forms of the definite article, then you will know which case the noun following it is in. So if you know that ho is masculine nominative singular, you know that the word doulos must therefore be nominative, it must be the subject. And if you know that ton is masculine accusative singular, you know that what follows it, doulon, must be accusative. So there, the slave must be the object, the direct object, the one on the receiving end of the action. Now, tu is a bit trickier because it can be either masculine or neuter genitive singular, depending on the context. Here it's masculine. If you look at the table, the forms are identical in the masculine and neuter genitive singular. They're both tu. But here, because doulos is a masculine noun, tu is masculine genitive singular. Either way, if you know that tu is genitive, then you know that this must mean of the slave. Even if you're unsure of the noun's case from its ending, you know from the definite article that tu doulou means of the slave. You know that this noun must be in the genitive because of the genitive form of the definite article being used. the definite article is a key. And finally, if you know that toi is either masculine or neuter dative singular, once again the forms are identical there, then you know that the noun following it must be dative. And so you know that toi, douloi, means either to the slave or for the slave, depending on the context. Moreover, you can get even more information than that from the definite article. For example, if you see ho doulos, and you know that ho is masculine nominative singular, then you know that the noun following it must also be all of those three things, because the definite article needs to completely agree with the noun that follows it. So you know that doulos must not only also be nominative, but it must also be masculine and singular. So do you see how much information you can get from just the definite article? And that's why I'm introducing it first. It's a really useful key to the rest of Greek. We will also learn in the future how nouns change their endings, but for now, the definite article is a very useful key. But we will need to eventually learn the noun endings also, because the definite article does not always appear. It's not always used. You might just see doulon on its own, and you will need to know which case it's in. And you might have noticed that they both end in on here, but that ending is used elsewhere, as employon, for example, and the endings don't always match like this. So we'll need to learn noun endings separately at a later date. But for now, let's focus on the definite article. And we know that we can get the gender, case and number of the noun that follows the definite article if we know the forms of the definite article. And therefore you should commit that table to memory. Memorize that beautifully illustrated table of the definite article. There's numerous ways that you could remember it. I personally repeated it to myself a lot, over and over again, and tried writing it out over and over again. And you should really repeat it to yourself in descending order. So start with the masculine column and memorize it downwards. So ho, ton, tu, toi, hoi, tus, ton, tois. Then go on to the feminine column. He, ten, tes, te, hai, tas, ton, tais. And then finally, the neuter column, to, tu, toi, ta, ton, tois. Please do commit this table to memory. And note that some of the forms are identical. Okay, so for example, tu can be masculine genitive singular or neuter genitive singular. And now you might wonder, how would you know, for example, if you just met tu doulou and you didn't know the meaning of the noun, how would you know what gender it is? Well, you could look up the doul part in a dictionary and you would find doulos. And once you know how nouns change their endings, it will become a lot easier to find the original noun in the dictionary. I say original in that in a Greek dictionary, the nominative form of the noun will be listed. The nominative singular form, in fact. And the dictionary will either list the gender or it will give you the form of the article that applies to it. So it might say doulos ho, which lets you know that it's masculine, that you would use ho with the nominative singular form. I just want to add one more thing about case, and that is, if a language has cases, then it is called an inflected language. And there are still some inflected languages today, like German and Russian, for example. English doesn't really have cases today, but there are some places in English where cases do still exist. So for example, English pronouns have cases. We say he if he is the subject of the sentence, but we say him if he is the object of the sentence. So we would say he saw me, but we would say I saw him. We change the ending based on whether it's the subject in the nominative case or the object in the accusative case. Likewise, we do this with they and them. They is the nominative form and them is the accusative form. We also do it with I and me and we and us. So there are a few places where we still have cases in English, but almost every noun in ancient Greek had cases. In addition to pronouns, and even adjectives had cases in ancient Greek. Let's now look at number. A noun's number refers to its quantity. A noun in ancient Greek can be either singular or plural. And once again, the definite article is a key, in that if a plural form of the definite article is used, then you know that the noun that follows it must also be plural, whether or not you know how that noun changes its endings. Because nouns change their endings according to both case and number. So for example, the noun doulos means one slave, but the noun douloi means slaves. You can see that the ending has changed. But once again, we're not learning how nouns change their endings today because we have the definite article. So ho doulos would be the slave and hoi douloi would be the slaves. You know from the definite article whether the noun is singular or plural, even if you don't know the noun's endings. There is one other grammatical number in ancient Greek which is called the joule, which is used when there is two of something. However, the joule is very rare and it actually fell out of use in later Greek, and so it's not that important to us right now. So, you should commit those tables containing the forms of the definite article to memory. Please do try and learn them, because the exercise I'm about to show you now will revolve around identifying the gender, case and number of different forms of the definite article. So I've listed 12 different forms of the definite article on the board. What I would like you to do is pause the video and from memory try to identify the gender, case and number of each form of the definite article. And this would of course tell you the gender, case and number of the noun that follows it. And you will write them in that order, gender, case and number, and you can abbreviate them in the ways that I've described. I forgot to mention that singular is abbreviated S with a dot and plural is abbreviated PL with a dot. So for masculine nominative singular, you could write M nom S. Some of these forms are ambiguous. In those cases, specify all of the possibilities. So if it can be either masculine or neuter, say M/N, with a dot after each letter, of course, since these are abbreviations. Pause the video and try it now. Okay, I'm about to reveal the answers. The first one, her, is feminine nominative singular. The second one, tous, is masculine accusative plural. The third one, ton, is an ambiguous one. It's masculine, feminine, or neuter genitive plural. We can only know which it is when it's actually being used with a noun. Then, if we know the gender of the noun, we'll know whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter. Ho is masculine nominative singular. Theos is feminine genitive singular. To is neuter nominative or accusative singular. So once again, ambiguous, and we would know from the context whether it's applying to the subject or the object. A really crucial point here is that all ancient Greek neuter forms have an identical nominative and accusative form. Neuter forms are the same in the nominative and the accusative, and that is why the definite article goes to in the singular and ta in the plural for the nominative and accusative. Number 7, ton is masculine accusative singular. Number 8, hai is feminine nominative plural. Number 9, ta is neuter nominative or accusative plural depending on the context. Number 10, ten is feminine accusative singular. Number 11, tois is masculine or neuter dative plural. And finally, tu is masculine or neuter genitive singular. We're now going to start translating some simple sentences given what you've learned about verbs in lessons 8 and 9 and what you've now learned about the definite article and how it can be used as a key to know the gender, case and number of the following noun. Case and number are actually the most important of those qualities when it comes to how we translate Greek. Here we have 9 ancient Greek nouns with their English meanings. I have put the appropriate form of the nominative singular definite article after the noun to let you know its gender. So although you would find the definite article before the noun it applies to in an ancient Greek text, in vocabulary lists and dictionaries they often list it afterwards to let you know the noun's gender. So we're told that hair is used with boer, which lets us know that it's feminine, whereas ho is used with despotes, which lets you know that it's a masculine noun, and to is used with ploion, which lets you know that it's a neuter noun. Please do write this list down and commit these meanings to memory, because these are the nouns that I'm going to use in examples of simple sentences And I'm also going to use them in the exercises pertaining to simple sentences. Some of them you already know, since I've already used them in this lesson. Some others you can make links to English to help you remember the meaning. So let's just go through them. Boer means shout, we've already covered that one. Despotes means master. This is where we get the word despot from in English. A despot being a tyrannical ruler. Didaskalos means teacher. This is related to the word didactic in English. Doulos means slave, we've already covered that one. Epistolaire means letter, in the sense of I'm going to write you a letter, not a letter of the alphabet. And we get the English word epistolary from epistolaire. Epistolary means in the form of a letter. So Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein is an epistolary novel because it's written in the form of letters. We also get the word epistles from epistolaire. In the New Testament, you've got the Gospels and you've got the epistles. The epistles are the letters written by various members of the early Christian church, including Paul. Next we have hippos. This means horse. We get the word hippopotamus from hippos. The word hippopotamus actually comes from two Greek words, hippos meaning horse and potamos meaning river. So a hippopotamus, is a river horse. Next we have korra. This means girl. I can't make any links with English there. Next we have xenos, which means foreigner or stranger. If you transliterated this, it would be xenos, and that's where we get the English words xenophobia and also xenomorph from alien. Finally, we have ploion, which means ship. We've already covered that one. I'm not sure if there are any links we can make there. Here is our very first ancient Greek simple sentence. The verb didaskor is the verb to teach, but here it ends in a, so it's third person singular. He, she, it teaches. And we see that we have ho, which is the masculine nominative singular form of the definite article. So we're being told who is doing the teaching. And we're told ho despotes didaske ton doulon. We know despotes means master, and because it's nominative, which we know from the definite article, the master must be doing the action, he must be doing the teaching. And we know that the slave, the doulos, must be the object because ton is masculine accusative singular. So we would translate this sentence, the master is teaching the slave, or the master teaches the slave. Remember that present tense verbs might be translated as does that thing or is doing that thing, depending on the context. But what about if we had this sentence? Ton doulon didaske ho despotes. How would you translate it? The answer is that it will be translated in exactly the same way as the sentence above it, because in Greek, the word order is not what matters. Greek word order is very flexible. What matters is the endings of the words. Or in the case of the definite article, the form of the definite article. Since with the definite article it's not just a matter of changing the ending, but it's a matter of changing the whole form in some cases. So, because ho is still used with despotes, the master is still the subject, wherever he is in the sentence. And likewise, because ton is used here, the masculine accusative singular of the definite article, the slave is still the object, wherever he appears in the sentence. So even if it were in the order ton doulon didaske ho despotes, this would still mean the master teaches the slave, or the master is teaching the slave. The word order really doesn't matter as much as it does in English. So in ancient Greek, you need to be able to spot where the subject is, where the nominative noun is, which the definite article is very useful for, and you also need to spot where the direct object is, where is the accusative noun. And then you need to put the sentence together, a bit like solving a puzzle, and translate it into nice, natural English. Finally, you could also have the sentence in this order, ho despotes ton doulon didaske, and it would still mean the master teaches the slave. Because the master is still the subject, as indicated by the definite article, and the slave is still the object, as indicated by the definite article. The master is in the nominative case, whereas the slave is in the accusative case. So word order is very flexible in ancient Greek, and you need to use the definite article as a key to know the function that each noun is performing in the sentence. Let's look at one more simple sentence. Hodoulos horai ton hipon. We know that horao is the verb to see, it's a contract verb. Here it's horai, it's in the third person singular, present indicative active. And we know that ho is masculine nominative singular. So the slave must be the subject, whereas the hippos, the horse, because it's ton hippon, must be the object, since ton is masculine accusative singular. And therefore, we would translate this sentence, the slave sees the horse. And once again, you could change the order here. You could have chodoulos ton hippon horai, and it would still mean the same thing. Because it's about the case of the nouns, which we know from the definite article, we will also know this from the noun endings, but not just yet. We'll learn that in the future. However, I am now out of time. I wish that I had unlimited time to teach you ancient Greek, but unfortunately I do not. And so I'm going to leave you with those two tasks, namely learning those beautifully illustrated tables containing the forms of the definite article, and also learning that list of vocabulary, that list of nouns. Please make sure you also know the meanings of the verbs from lesson 8 and from lesson 9. Because next lesson we're going to look at some more simple sentences involving plural nouns and also involving nouns in the genitive case and the dative case, since these sentences just involve a noun in the nominative case and a noun in the accusative case. But you've got a lot to revise. And before we end the lesson, just one final thing about the tables containing the forms of the definite article. Some of these forms of the definite article have accents, and some of them have circumflexes on them. However, I have omitted these because, as I mentioned before, I am not including accents unless we're looking at an original Greek text. And with regard to the circumflexes, I'm only going to include them where I think it's useful to know of their existence. So for example, I've included circumflexes on contracted verbs. Anyway. I hope you have a lovely morning or day or evening, whatever time you're watching this at, and I shall see you again next time.